project that I was lucky enough to be a part of was a community-based planning process that had a very important, prominent youth component to it. And it resulted, the project itself was the designing and the planning, and then ultimately the constructing and maintenance of a park in Oakland, California. That ultimately resulted in a fantastic place to play in a place that had been traditionally very underserved. It was a long process, but ultimately the community and most importantly the youth prevailed. Obviously, some of the initial challenges were getting the youth to buy into the project. It's very difficult, or some of the challenges that I faced initially were my role as a community organizer for the project was to get youth to focus on a project that was very abstract, long-term, in a place that wasn't necessarily in their immediate backyard, and then to get them to understand and to feel empowered enough to make a difference. So getting youth to buy in to the project was the initial challenge, I would think. And not such a challenge after we got their buy-in and their investment, but getting over that initial hurdle of going into these inner city, underfunded, disinvested schools and trying to get youth to become engaged in a project that was very, like I said, abstract and long-term and not in the immediate future. Youth engagement, and I mean real engagement, excuse me, not just token engagement. I mean, I think that every process that's out there probably has some sort of generic youth component to it, where there's a steering committee set up and, you know, they meet and they talk. But I mean real youth buy-in and ownership of a project, particularly one that is, you know, when you're talking about parks and recreation. You know, there's other things that youth could get involved in, like transit or education, which are all very important. But parks and rec, particularly because it's something that youth can get excited about and really take pride in and take ownership of in a way that is very unique to that particular type of project. And so I think that there's probably, in my experience, I've seen a lot of places where youth have been brought in, but more as a token level of participation. And to see youth become engaged and take ownership of the project and ultimately have tremendous impact in its overall success was probably the most important experience for me in terms of seeing youth engaged in a project. Well, thankfully, because the youth were so engaged and because they took ownership of the project, they were able to help win funding that wasn't there to begin with, that was not attainable through any efforts of adults per se or, you know, community stakeholders traditionally. You know, our elected officials, our community leaders, community activists, no one had succeeded in winning funds for the park or maintenance for the park. And actually, we had a lot of hopes for other ways of getting maintenance for the park that weren't necessarily in the best interest of the youth. And so the youth, recognizing that, found a way to be able to win long-term funding for the park themselves and finding tax dollars, effectively, to fund the park itself and the long-term maintenance of it. If you're looking to get a park developed in your community, you have to certainly make do with what you have initially. You have to figure out what you have immediately available and work with that. And a lot of times it might not be immediately obvious, but with the help of professionals who might be able to help you see things that have potential, like, you know, brownfields or abandoned lots or neglected pieces of property. You know, you can see things that are right there in the community that you already have a sort of a foothold on, just because it's geographically located right there already, and you don't have to, I guess everything's geographically located in the community, but you certainly don't have to do a whole lot of remediation and or buying up places. Secondly, I would say that you'd have to look outside of your immediate community as well for resources and to help to collect resources. You have to look well beyond the local vicinity and maybe even the municipality, and probably as far as the federal government, to be able to help in these fights, to help to direct resources. And thirdly, I would say that you would have to get early political involvement. You have to keep your elected officials informed of the process, and even if they don't have the time to help right away, at least they know about the process and can help, and it won't be a shock to them once they figure out what you're doing. And then fourth, I would recommend a real important, and like I said, key youth component of any planning process, particularly in a park planning process, and even to the extent where you can get youth stipends for their participation to really help them move along. It really acts as an initial motivator. Even if the stipends can't be long term, at least the youth know that they have some value and they're not just some cog in the overall process. They need to know that it's around them, and they should really be the leaders on this and be engaged in it. And even if the stipend can't be very much or can't be long, can't last for very long, at least it's something, and it will effectively act as the fertilizer that will ultimately give this youth roots to this project that they won't want to give up long after the stipends run out. And then making sure that youth engagement is maintained in some way or another, because the potential to lose youth over these projects in time, over time I should say, is real high. Youth grew up, they go to school, they go away. So making sure to keep youth engaged regularly, like every other week or what have you, or also initially reaching out to younger youth at the same time as they reach older youth. Most of the time we don't look beyond high school, but I would say that you could even get 7th and 8th graders involved, because these processes are often 5, 6, 10-year processes, and these youth, if you get them early enough, they become vested in the project and will be there for you in the long haul when you might not even be there anymore.